已经过一个好日子，在北京的老胡同里，或者在一些老的居民区，像和平里，我家在和平里，其实过的日子很好，又是有一个社交圈，又是可以做买卖，又是能吃得好，又可以骑自行车，完了周围全是文化和历史，北京的生活挺牛逼的。
what what was it? What do you say?
um, I said that living in Beijing is a wonderful life. My home was in the Hutongs. It was also in an area called Hepingli. I had great community. Had great food to eat. Had great places to to build my business. You're surrounded by culture. You're surrounded by history. And I finished off with a Beijing kind of. It's a bit rude, but also kind of nice way of saying awesome, which is 牛逼. It's just a Beijing way of saying awesome.
Can you compare? I guess it's a generalization, but like how you compare how the typical Chinese mindset, and the typical Western mindset? I mean, sweeping generalization, but like, are there any like because there is a lot of miscommunication between like China and the West. But what do you think on a how people think level? What are the differences?
You have to look at history, like a mirror, as they say. And if I compare my own country, England, which would be my best comparison because I haven't really lived in other Western countries, is that China has had a pretty chaotic 200 years before opening up and reform. To say pretty chaotic is actually downplaying it. It's terribly chaotic. And that really is a big important part of the Chinese mindset, is that they're terrified of going back to that level of chaos. And so the mindset is really very pragmatic, which is that, I want to have a secure life. I want to have food on the table, and I don't want to have chaos. And I want to be able to save my money and have some economic stability and freedom. And from that economic prosperity and saving money, or that I'll have a certain sense of independence and freedom. And so in the West, in the UK, we have the NHS, we have government support, you have unemployment benefits, you have the common law, and you have a big kind of focus on individuality, the individual. And that gives birth to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and David Hockney. I love Britain for that. The level of creativity that comes out of the individual is awe-inspiring. And so I'd say that is, I guess, is a very big difference. But that, of course, is changing. Now the individual is really coming out in China, and the creatives, I work with a lot of creatives in China. The creatives in China now are coming up to the same level as the creatives I work with in the UK. It's a progression. Yeah, so it's changing.
What are the other like misconceptions that you came across? Like, I don't know, maybe from your friends back in the UK, like something that people don't get about China.
What you were saying about population is very hard for people to understand what it's like to manage a population of 1.4 billion, and thereby the different forms of governance that will come from that. I think a lot of people didn't understand policies, like crazy policies that the Chinese government managed to enact, like the one-child policy. There's a lot of common misconceptions that are sort of based around the fact that people are terrified of a government that they see as communist as well, because they don't really understand how the Chinese sort of socialist government works. I don't know. I mean, I think generally, people in Britain now are very, I saw the whole thing change. In the 90s, I'd come back to my local pub and people like, China, what the hell are you doing in China? and then and then in the 2000s, it was kind of like, oh, I've heard some stuff about China. Then the Olympics happened, and they're kind of like, oh, you were really smart to move to
Uh,
China, you know? And then, different things happened, and COVID happened, and people are like, get out of China. So a lot of their views are based on stuff that they read in whatever media they pick up, whether it's the Rupert Murdoch paper or the Guardian or the Economist, is kind of what bends their idea of the country. But there's a shitload of misconceptions. It's just like in China, there's so many misconceptions about the UK. And at the beginning, nobody knew
like
anything
what?
about. Well, I mean, I remember when I was in a hairdresser in the 90s and a fly landed on the mirror, and my hairdresser knew I was English. And she said to me, do you have flies in England? I was like, yeah, we got flies in England. And I remember she'd watched the film and she said, do all English people wear hats when they go to bed? and it's because she'd seen a film about it. You get a lot of these misconceptions in China because they're learning about the world right now. You always hear this saying was, 你们外国人都是那样, you foreigners are all like that, because they put you all into one basket. Now that's not them being racist. It's just like that's their understanding of the world right now, because they haven't traveled or they haven't gone out and seen it. They're misconceptions. So I think at the end of the day, one has to be patient, not get angry about these things. I just loved having conversations with your average Joe on the street about England, because they just wanted to know about it. Chinese people are very curious.
I guess it's one of the actually misconceptions of what people think about China, that there is no like IP, no rights on your brand, and like Chinese just copy everything and that make it their own product. So that's what people, I know that many Americans think this way about China.
And what's crazy now is a lot of that artwork that I created, it's really in the sphere. Like, people just know the artwork, but they don't know anyone owns it. So now, when I closed down my retail stores in China, I took all of my IP and moved it into a wholly owned foreign enterprise, a business, and I license it, right? Because people want to license it. But on any given month, I can probably make more money from litigation than I do from licensing. I mean, if you take the Chinese, I did a range of artwork which is based around Peking opera, figures, like a pop artwork thing, and did an East meets West thing with it. I mean, if you image search those artworks on Taobao, you'll find thousands of products. So I make quite a lot of money from litigation. So it's funny, a lot of people think there's no IP protection in China. Of course, it's a different level of IP protection in China than it is to the West. And there's good reasons for that. But you can also protect your IP, and you can, you find a good lawyer, you do a 50-50 split with them, you can make good money as well. When I started, the initial range of 20 t-shirts, only 3 or 4 sold well. And it was all iconography. It was like the subway map, some old like metal mugs and stuff like that, like the retro kind of, vintage, that hadn't given birth yet in China. They hadn't had retro yet in 2006. I actually copyrighted the subway ticket. So as soon as it started to sell well, I just went down the trademark office, filled out the certificate, paid my 420 RMB to file a trademark, and I trademarked the subway ticket. So actually, I still own it because no one trademarked it. In China, it's first come, first serve. If you start a brand in China, you don't trademark it, someone can come and trademark it, right? They can literally steal it from you. So you need to be first in. If you've got an idea, trademark, the stuff. So whenever I reproduced artwork, especially in the last 10 years, we would trademark it, copyright it before we even put it onto market, quite often, because we wanted to protect it. So actually, there's a lot of old Chinese IP that nobody had trademarked, and I ended up trademarking it myself. So, that's a lot of those old iconography and images that I use, from old metal bowls to subway tickets. I trademarked them or copyrighted them. Yeah.